Welcome to the Daily Vibecasting. Today, OpenAI raises more cash than most countries' GDPs, Anthropic accidentally drops the mother of all source code leaks, and the job market's bullshit jobs are getting wiped out by hyper-efficient AI agents.
It is honestly an absolute structural earthquake in the tech sector today.
Yeah, it really is. So if you are sitting at your desk wondering where your industry is heading tomorrow, we are mapping a real-time collision for you today. On one side, you have these towering tech monopolies hoarding just unprecedented amounts of capital and compute.
Right.
And on the other side, you have a relentless rebellion of open source developers running incredibly powerful AI entirely offline on like iPhones and Mac Minis.
Yeah, it's wild.
We are tracking exactly how this power struggle changes the way you work, the tools you use, and the rapidly expiring concept of owning an idea.
It's the classic David versus Goliath scenario, right? Except in this timeline, David is armed with a highly compressed gigabyte of localized compute, and Goliath just secured a $100 billion war chest. We are watching the complete rewiring of the global economy happening right under our noses.
Completely. So let's start with the biggest stakes on the board right now. There's a post from @OpenAI, and user Martintail captured the surreal nature of this news perfectly. OpenAI just announced a staggering funding round of $122 billion in committed capital.
Which is just, I mean, it's hard to even wrap your head around.
Yeah, that puts their post-money valuation at $852 billion. Martintail pointed out the sheer head-spinning absurdity of these numbers. For context, $122 billion is literally more than the gross domestic product of many sovereign nations.
Right, and as an analyst, whenever I see a capital concentration that immense, my immediate instinct is to look for the second-order effects. Where does $122 billion actually go?
Exactly. Does it just vanish?
Yeah, is it just vanishing into server farms in the desert to chase artificial general intelligence, or does it actually trickle down to create tangible economic value? Because right now there is a fascinating counter-narrative developing about what all this deployed AI power is doing to the reality of your daily job.
Oh, you mean the post from Atzel?
Yes, the user who goes by Rune online, he is aggressively challenging the popular bullshit jobs theory.
The David Graeber theory.
Yeah.
The widespread idea that half the corporate world is just doing meaningless administrative make work that, doesn't actually need to exist.
Exactly. Rune points out that understanding the modern workforce through the lens of fake work is just fantastically wrong right now. The reality we're stepping into is a global red queen rat race.
A red queen rat race.
Yeah, we're in an economy where minor differences in skill lead to monumentally different outcomes. And what's fascinating here is how AI tools are intensifying this dynamic. Rune introduces this concept of a personal Jevons paradox.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the Jevons paradox is usually an environmental economics concept, right? Like making coal engines more efficient in the 1800s didn't reduce global coal use. It just made people use way more coal because running the engines became cheaper and more profitable.
Spot on. Now apply that exact mechanism to human productivity. If you are listening to this and AI suddenly makes your marginal hour of work incredibly productive, let's say you can launch a full web application or draft 20 pristine legal contracts from your phone while riding the train, you don't suddenly work less.
You just do more.
Right. It raises the perceived value of your time. You execute more ideas, you work harder. The high earners, the people with high agency, are suddenly producing the output of 10 people, which forces everyone else to run twice as fast just to stay in the same place.
And we actually have hard data backing this up to date. Look at the post from @iCombinator about a company called Variance coming out of stealth. Karine Malata, the co-founder, just announced a $21 million Series A.
Yeah, that was a huge announcement.
Variance builds AI agents for fraud detection and compliance for Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah.
But what is mind-blowing here is the team size. They have a lean 5-engineer team that is rivaling the output of 25 human engineers.
And we really need to clarify how they are doing that. I mean, they aren't just typing faster.
Yeah.
Those 5 engineers are acting as directors. They are utilizing AI coding agents as digital subcontractors that autonomously run test suites, scrape data, and write boilerplate code. They are catching state-sponsored fraud rings with a fraction of the traditional headcount because the humans are just orchestrating the AI workers.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy. Is this AI productivity boom just like the invention of the spreadsheet? I mean, it didn't eliminate accountants, it just forced them to do 100 times more math. But what happens when the spreadsheet can write its own formulas?
I actually want to push back on that analogy a bit because it's fundamentally different this time. The spreadsheet couldn't decide what formulas to write. It was a passive tool. This is more like the spreadsheet actively interviewing the accountant, understanding the tax code, and then filing the return itself. Variance is doing the work of 25 people with 5. What happens to the other 20?
They're just out of the equation.
Exactly. Their potential jobs haven't disappeared into fake work. Those roles have been absorbed into the hyper-efficiency of the 5 people who learned to orchestrate the AI.
But relying entirely on these centralized, towering AI tools brings us to a glaring structural vulnerability. Because while OpenAI is building this impenetrable $852 billion financial fortress, their biggest rival, Anthropic, just left their front door completely unlocked.
Oh man, this story is wild.
A sprawling post from @HeyShrudha details what might be the craziest leak in software history. At 4 a.m., Anthropic accidentally pushed an update to NPM.
And for the listeners who might not write code, NPM is the Node Package Manager. It is the fundamental plumbing developers use every day to download standard blocks of code. You do not put your secret sauce on NPM.
Exactly. But hidden inside this routine package was a 60-megabyte debugging file containing 512,000 lines of their highly guarded Claude Code source code.
500,000 lines of code.
Yeah. And the supreme irony here is that this leak completely bypassed Anthropic's internal security feature, literally called undercover mode, which was specifically engineered to prevent exactly this kind of data spill.
It is a staggering operational failure. You have to understand that these companies base their entire stratospheric valuations on the premise that their code is a proprietary black box.
And the developer community wasted zero time tearing that box open. Posts from @Akash Gupta and @Alex Finn show that engineers immediately dug through the 1900 leaked files.
Of course they did.
And they found all these unreleased, highly secretive features. We are talking about 247 proactive agents, a background dream ideation state by 402 crypto payments, and literal references to an unreleased model called Opus 4.7.
The background dreaming feature is particularly wild to me. It means the AI isn't just passively waiting for you to type a prompt. While your laptop is closed, the system is continuously running Monte Carlo simulations of your ongoing projects.
It's ideating in the background.
Right, ideating solutions so they are ready the moment you log back in. It makes for great headlines. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, those flashy features don't actually matter.
Wait, really? Why not?
What matters is the structural market threat this event just exposed. There is a post by @YushinGUW that captures the real paradigm shift happening here.
Oh, this is the story about the developer who forked the code, right?
Yes, someone immediately copied or forked the leaked TypeScript code onto GitHub. It gathered tens of thousands of stars in hours. But then, this developer got scared of facing a ruinous lawsuit from Anthropic.
Which is a completely rational fear.
Very rational. But look at what they did next. Instead of just deleting the repository, they used an AI orchestration tool built on OpenAI's Codex to automatically translate the entire leaked code base from TypeScript into Python overnight.
And we really need to emphasize why that is such a technical miracle. TypeScript and Python have fundamentally different architectures and logic flows.
Completely different.
TypeScript is strictly typed and built for web environments, while Python is highly dynamic and built for data science. Translating an entire intricate system between them isn't just swapping vocabulary words in a document. It is like taking a diesel engine, disassembling it, and perfectly rebuilding it as an electric motor while the car is driving down the highway.
Precisely. The AI handled the parallel code reviews, the architecture verification, the syntax translation, all of it autonomously. @YushinJUW argues, and I fully agree, that this is the moment we realize AI is quietly erasing the concept of software copyright.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about the legal ramifications for a second. If an AI can launder a copyrighted software architecture into a completely new programming language overnight, isn't enforcing software copyright in the AI era like trying to catch water with a sieve?
I actually think it's significantly worse than a sieve. A sieve implies you are still catching something, even if most of it slips through. This is more like trying to copyright a shadow. By the time the corporate lawyers arrive with their cease and desist letters, the original codebase doesn't even exist anymore.
It's already gone.
Right. It's already been laundered into Python, compiled, and integrated into a dozen open source projects. In the 1980s, companies used clean room design to legally clone IBM mainframes. One team reads the manual, another team writes fresh code without ever seeing IBM's actual source code. It took months and millions of dollars.
And now?
Today, AI just acts as an automated, instantaneous clean room. It extracted the architecture from Anthropic's TypeScript and generated brand new, non-infringing Python code that performs the exact same function.
And the fallout has been incredibly messy to watch. You have Adania Villa7 pointing out that Anthropic's legal team went into full panic mode. They started issuing these spray and pray DMCA takedown notices across GitHub.
Yeah, and they were hitting completely innocent public forks.
Exactly. They were taking down repositories that were just using Anthropic's public legal APIs, not the leaked code. It was pure chaos.
It perfectly illustrates the fragility of their defensive mode. You have these companies valued at hundreds of billions of dollars, and their entire intellectual property strategy relies on text remaining secret. But the moment it slips out, even for a millisecond, the AI tools built by their rivals can instantaneously commoditize it.
And of course, developer culture being what it is, the coping mechanism for all this corporate chaos is immediate, merciless satire. We saw at the Cheeto post a viral parody of Anthropic's PR response using a classic meme format.
The Kit Kat meme, yeah.
Yeah. And then there is at TRQ212, who posted this brilliant April Fool's concept introducing Huskly. Huskly is a snail persona you can invoke in your code editor via a /buddy command. It supposedly has 79% debugging patience and just delivers verbose, depressing eulogies when your code breaks.
It is a genuinely funny meme, but it resonates because it highlights a deep cultural exhaustion. Developers are caught in the crossfire of these giant centralized labs fighting over DMCA claims and $100 billion valuations.
So if the centralized cloud has become a legal minefield where your proprietary data can be leaked or cloned in a matter of hours, the natural counter movement is pulling everything offline.
Right, back to local.
And that is exactly what the open source rebellion is doing right now. We are seeing breakthroughs in edge AI and local compute that frankly sound like science fiction. Look at the post from Andrew Curran. He highlights a company called PrismML coming out of stealth with a 1-bit model called Bonsai 8B. They compressed an 8 billion parameter language model down to 1.15 gigabytes so it can run in real time on a standard iPhone.
We really need to pause on the mechanics of that, because 1-bit quantization is the holy grail of edge computing, and it is vital to understand how it works. Normally, an AI model stores its parameters, essentially the weights of how much it cares about a specific concept, as highly precise 16-bit floating point decimal numbers.
Like numbers with a lot of decimal places.
Right. Think of a number like Matto 0.8432. Storing billions of those requires immense amounts of memory and server energy.
Which is why you normally need a massive data center to run them.
Exactly. But 1-bit quantization forces the AI to round every single thought into a binary extreme, a 1 or a negative 1. Yes or no. It is an extreme form of digital compression. They reduce the file size by a factor of 14 and cut the energy consumption by a factor of 5.
Wow.
And the engineering miracle here isn't just making the file smaller, it is that they managed to retrain the neural network to retain its intelligence and reasoning capabilities despite this brutal binary simplification.
And PrismML isn't the only one cracking this code. We have at Liquideye dropping their LFM 2.5 350 million parameter model. It fits into less than 500 megabytes when quantized, and it is achieving actual agentic loops.
For context, an agentic loop means the AI isn't just functioning as a chatbot that answers a single prompt. You give it a high-level goal, and it autonomously breaks that goal into steps, executes step 1, evaluates the result, and then moves to step 2. And doing this offline, disconnected from the cloud, is a game changer for privacy.
And this is where the software directly meets the hardware on your desk. The post from @tinygrad is a tremendous signal here. They just announced that Apple officially approved their eGPU driver.
This is huge. An eGPU is an external graphics processing unit. For years, Mac users have been somewhat locked out of the hardcore AI hardware game because Apple uses unified memory.
Right.
But this driver means you can take a standard, quiet Mac Mini, plug it into a towering, power-hungry AMD or NVIDIA graphics card via a high-bandwidth Thunderbolt cable, and suddenly your desktop has the localized compute power of a server rack.
This completely obliterates the barrier to entry. Look at Lenison's post promoting Clairvaux's OpenClaw guide. Everyday people are using these local open-source hardware setups to build self-managing AI teams.
The entire team.
Yeah, they spin up a localized marketer agent, a developer agent, a QA tester, all communicating and executing tasks autonomously. And the cost. People are doing this for as little as $100 a month in electricity and basic API routing. Compare that to the exorbitant enterprise subscription fees monopolies charge.
And we are already seeing incredibly practical applications of this. Look at the post from @HassanToxer demonstrating a tool called Perceptron AI. It uses a locally running Claude vision model to extract structured data from crumpled, faded, badly lit receipts.
And a vision model doesn't just read text left to right like old school optical character recognition, right?
Right. It actually understands the spatial relationship of the pixels. It recognizes the structural difference between a merchant's logo, a tax line, and a tip amount, even if the paper is folded. It converts that visual noise directly into structured JSON data. It's a one-line install that perfectly automates expense tracking, completely offline.
So what does this all mean? We are witnessing a historic reverse migration in computing. If you look at the timeline, we went from centralized corporate mainframes to personal computers on everyone's desk in the 90s. Then we pushed everything back to centralized mainframes by moving our lives to the cloud. And now, hyper-efficient local AI is pushing us right back to the personal computer era. Are these hyper-efficient local models going to cannibalize OpenAI's $852 billion valuation if good enough is suddenly running locally on your desk?
This raises an important question. The centralized models will always be the frontier of reasoning. They will always be the smartest entities in the room. But the vast majority of daily business tasks, reading a crumpled receipt, drafting an email, writing boilerplate code, they just do not require frontier intelligence.
Yeah, you don't need a supercomputer to read a receipt.
Exactly. If open source models cross the threshold of good enough, and they run locally on your phone with zero latency, complete privacy, and no monthly subscription fees, the bottom completely falls out of the consumer AI market.
Which means the monopolies will have to rely strictly on massive enterprise contracts to justify those valuations. And you can see that macro-level anxiety playing out in the geopolitics of the space today. If consumers abandon them, they pivot to governments.
That's always the move.
There is a post from @Anthropic AI announcing they just signed a formal memorandum of understanding with the Australian government to collaborate on AI safety research.
The official press release heavily emphasizes public sectors like healthcare and education. But if you look at the quote tweets, @TyHooch instantly points out the cynical counter-narrative that everyone in the industry is whispering about. The PR talks about analyzing medical genomics, but when an AI company partners with a sovereign, defense-aligned government on safety, the subtext is almost always the regulation and control of dual-use technology. People are quietly thinking about the prevention or the development of autonomous defense systems.
The whiplash of this industry is just intense. One minute you are listening to us talk about a local AI fixing your broken Python code, and the next minute we are talking about sovereign governments locking down models to manage global defense systems.
It's a lot to process.
Which is exactly why the developer culture relies so heavily on satire to cope with the sheer speed of change. For instance, at BunJavaScript, which is a very popular high-performance open-source developer toolkit, posted an April Fool's joke announcing that their command line interface was going ad-supported.
Oh, the mock-up image they posted was painfully brilliant. It showed a developer's terminal window covered in intrusive neon-sponsored banners and error messages that literally lock you out of your code until you watch a 30-second video ad.
It's so funny because it's so dark. The command line interface is basically a developer's sacred, distraction-free sanctuary.
Exactly, and it struck such a nerve because it plays on a very real, very present fear. Developer monetization is incredibly broken right now. Open source maintainers are burning out, providing the foundational architecture for trillion-dollar companies for absolutely free. So joking about forcing banner ads into the terminal highlights the desperate search for survival in the open source world.
And speaking of tech nostalgia and the permanence of our digital lives, we have a great nod to the past from @Sundar today. On Gmail's 22nd anniversary, Google finally announced a quality-of-life feature that users have been begging for over 2 decades.
This is such a funny update.
Yeah, you can now finally change your embarrassing email handle from 2004, the ones like SkayGatorBoy2004 to a professional adult name, while keeping the old address as a hidden alias so you don't lose access to all your connected accounts.
It is a great update, but it's also a stark reminder of how incredibly permanent our digital infrastructure really is. Decisions made in a dorm room in 2004 are still haunting our professional login screens in 2026.
Yeah, that's so true.
It makes you wonder which foundational architectural decisions being made today by OpenAI and Anthropic are going to be permanently locked into our global infrastructure 2 decades from now.
It really does.
Yeah.
So let's bring this all the way back to you, the listener. How is this highly polarized world where mega models command $122 billion while a 1 gigabyte open source model runs completely offline on your desk, how does that actually change your workflow tomorrow morning?
I'll give you a hard analytical prediction based on everything we've tracked
Yeah.
today. Because of the Anthropic leak and the absolute proof of concept regarding AI-driven cross-language code translation, the protective moat around proprietary software is officially gone.
Just gone entirely.
Entirely. Within 48 hours of any future proprietary software release, whether it is a new AI framework, a productivity app, or a sleek enterprise tool, we will see an explosion of automated, functionally identical, clean room open source clones flooding GitHub. The friction of reverse engineering a competitor has gone from a 6-month engineering sprint to a 10-minute automated process.
Which leaves us with a truly existential question to end on. If your 1 gigabyte local AI can perfectly deconstruct, translate, and clone complex enterprise software overnight, in 5 years, will software companies even need to exist? Or will we all just buy raw computing hardware and let our personal localized AI generate whatever application we happen to need on the fly? Thank you for plugging in with us today. Keep your models local, keep your vibes curated, and we will see you on the next Deep Dive. Goodbye.